How to earn an income from your RV. Here's part 3, and it was so valuable, we've made it all about your accounting. You are going to hear today from Kelly Reeves, MBA from Genuine Accounting and Tax. She has a wealth of knowledge to share with you today, and we're going to get started right now. Whether you are in your retirement years, heading there, or nowhere close, we have great things to share with all stationary RVers, and many of our tips work for nomad RVers as well. So stay tuned for this week's amazing tips, tricks, and tested products. I would like to introduce my friend, my accountant, and my fellow RVer, Kelly Reeves, who is going to share with us today her experience both as an RVer, as a person who works from her RV, and as an expert who knows how to keep your home work and your business work separately. So, Kelly, welcome to RV Retirement Redesign.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And Happy New Year's to you.
Yes.
So we hopefully have a large audience that is excited about either working from home or starting their own home business. Either way, earning an income from their RV. So as I said, Kelly is a fellow RVer. Tell us about your RV, Kelly.
So, I live in a 40-foot Class A coach. So it's a huge, huge diesel pusher that I cannot drive, just so you know. But it's pretty cool. It's we've got 4 slide outs, which gave me enough room to work from my kitchen table. So my office is officially my kitchen table.
Right. Yes, and that's one of the things we talked about in a previous video is depending on the work you do, it can be simple as working from your kitchen table or a laptop on your couch or a full-blown desk if that's what you need as well. What were some of the things that really encouraged you or excited you about living in an RV?
The smaller lifestyle, the less stuff, and honestly, the being able to pick up and move whenever you want.
Pretty much the same reasons we're doing it, right? And what did you find, or do you find as an advantage of having a business that you can actually work out of your home, which is an RV?
So the biggest advantage is that I can be anywhere and still work on my clients' stuff. So that's pretty awesome. COVID has made it so it's acceptable to do accounting and taxes remotely. And that's what I do now. So lots of Zoom.
Yes, and COVID really did make it, like you say, acceptable. Not only acceptable, but pretty much what people do nowadays is work remotely in many cases. What do you find are essentials that you need to have in order to be able to work remotely?
So, first and foremost, a laptop is helpful. Second, good internet, which can be expensive depending on if you're traveling or if you're stationary. And just the ability to carve out enough room, to carve out enough room that you can actually work.
What are some of the things that you find are stumbling blocks to being able to work from home?
The biggest one is the space, because you've already downsized into a much smaller area. And I'm finding that, yes, I took over my desk, but then I also had to take over some of the kitchen area. And so I'm decreasing my living space to make room for my workspace.
Very true. Very true. And when you are in full-blown tax season, you have a lot of peripheral kinds of things that you need as well.
Oh yeah, full-blown tax season, forget it. You might not even see the couch because the files are everywhere.
Right. What are some of the things that you have found are much more you have a greater advantage if you're in a bricks and mortar office as opposed to being in, your mobile office of an RV.
I think the biggest advantage of being in an actual office space is that you have a place to meet clients.
Agreed.
So you're not going to invite clients to your RV, say, come on in, have a seat, let's go over things, because they're going to look at you like you have lost your mind. And so you become really good at picking out the best coffee shops in town and meeting people there.
That's a very good point. I think that there is a little bit, unfortunately, of a credibility issue if you say, oh, I work from an RV. It's not a new way of living, but it is a new way of providing an alternative living style for a group of people that probably wouldn't have made that choice several years ago.
Yeah.
So give us some really good advice now, especially for people. Well, maybe we need to make it two categories. One, people that just want to find a remote job, and what do they need to do tax wise, and then let's go into if they really want to have their own business, what do they need to do?
Okay. So with remote work being so popular nowadays, I know everybody runs out and they want to stock their office with all new furniture and whatnot. Unfortunately, the IRS has came out and said that that is not a deductible expense because you are doing that for your workplace. So, I would go with the basics if you're just working remotely from home for somebody else. I mean, make yourself comfortable, but don't expect to be able to write that off on your taxes. However, if you're working your own business, that's a totally different story. So everything you buy for that business that is strictly for that business is a tax deduction, along with whatever space you're using. Now, granted, in an RV, it's not going to be a lot, but whatever space you're using for your business. So in my instance, I measured my kitchen table or dining table and the space around it that I'm using, and I use that as my square footage that I can write off. It's not a lot, but it helps. So you have to be willing to put out a little bit of money either way and make yourself comfortable, but don't go overboard.
What are some of the things that maybe somebody that is working remotely for another company, what are the kinds of documentations that maybe they should be keeping that they can write off either on their taxes or they need to prove to their employer?
So definitely, receipts for anything that you buy. So whether it's printer ink or a new printer, I mean, definitely if you're using it for that work, you should request a reimbursement from your employer or see if they'll split it with you or something, because honestly, as an employer, they have an obligation to make sure you have what you need to do your job.
So what about if you have your own business and you are wanting to write as much as possible off, obviously, what do you do to keep the appropriate records, and what do you have to keep separate from home, and how do you do that?
Okay. So as far as records go, I err on the side of too much. So I recommend anything you buy that could possibly be used for the business, you keep. Now you can keep it electronically, so you can scan your receipts in, or you can keep the hard copies. It doesn't matter either way, but keep everything. Now the things that are different that you won't be able to write off, especially in an RV, are like your space rent, your utilities, that kind of stuff, because that's all going to fall under your home office deduction. And because your RV is probably going to be no bigger than 44 feet long, it'd be kind of hard to convince the IRS that 50% of your utilities went to your business when your business is 6 feet of the 40 feet.
True.
So that makes it a little more difficult. But yeah, I'm big on keep everything. And if you do end up using it as a business write-off, then you need to keep it for 7 years. If it's household stuff, I keep those receipts for about a year just in case there's an issue that comes up, and then you can get rid of those. So, but yeah, just keep them all.
Do you recommend any kind of specific software or paper record keeping or anything like that?
I don't. It all depends on the person and what they're comfortable with. I do suggest at a minimum, though, if you are running a business, that you keep stuff in Excel or in a spreadsheet of some sort, because that just makes it easier at year end. So you have everything right there and you can compile it. If you keep just paper records, you're going to end up giving that shoebox to your tax person who's going to charge you more because you just gave them a shoebox. So,
and that happens.
that does happen. So yes, Excel is your friend in this case. So if you have a bigger business, I totally recommend an online accounting program. So most people go with QuickBooks because it's user friendly, but I mean, there are others out there, obviously. So whatever works for you.
I would just add to that too, if you do have a larger business, if you're not an expert at bookkeeping, hire somebody. That is one of those, I think, correct me if you have a different opinion, but I do think that's one of those areas that as soon as possible, if that's not your forte, you get somebody else to do that.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it doesn't cost a lot to hire a bookkeeper that knows what they're doing, and making sure that your books are straight, because come year end, when you do have to go get your taxes done, whoever your tax preparer is going to be very thankful that your stuff is done properly and not have to spend another 4 or 5 hours fixing what's already been done.
Can you talk just for a minute the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant?
Sure. So a bookkeeper is the person that does the actual data entry. So they take, whether it's from your bank statement or your receipts, they take all that information and put it into the accounting program. So they can also prepare monthly or quarterly reports for you called a profit and loss, and a balance sheet that shows you where your money's coming and going from. But that's pretty much what a bookkeeper is there for, is to do the data entry. An accountant can analyze that data and work with you to make sure that your business is going in the direction that you want it to go. They also do taxes. They do a lot of cleanup work. They can help with tax planning and making sure that you are on track and you get to keep more of the money that you make.
Which is important if you're going to run a business.
Yes, it is.
What about checking accounts, home accounts, business accounts, and credit card use?
Okay, so I recommend that if you have a business, you have a business account. Even if you are a sole proprietor, you don't want to commingle those funds, because what happens is if you are audited, or if the IRS otherwise decides to even look into your account and they see all this money coming and going in your personal account, you could be responsible for taxes on money that you've already paid taxes on because you can't prove where it came from.
And nobody wants to pay double taxes.
No, it's not worth it. It's usually free to go open a second account somewhere. Usually, depends on your bank. But just go get that second account and keep your money separate.
So these aren't necessarily things that, an accountant would tell you, pretty much a lawyer would. We both agree neither one of us are lawyers.
No.
There are things you want to make sure are filed appropriately, like you are registered with your state. You more than likely will have to have an EIN number, especially if you have a bank account, because they want those for bank accounts nowadays. Are there any other kinds of documents that would be wise for them to have before taxes are filed?
So yes, so depending on how your business is set up, so let's go back to the EIN for a minute. So there, you can get an EIN for free through the IRS. I've heard of a lot of people paying for them because the first thing that comes up is a sponsored ad. Don't do that. Don't pay for your EIN. It's completely free. So, tip number 1. So number 2 is, when you're registering with the state, depending on how you're setting yourself up, you might have to have articles of incorporation or like a partnership agreement if you're a multi-member LLC. So there are things that you will need to look into depending on how you're setting yourself up. Now, if you're setting yourself up as small business, only owner, then the bank might require an EIN. You don't necessarily have to have one for anything else, but it's better to have one and not have to use your social security number on everything, because those are the 2 options. As far as other documents, it's good to, if you have a partner or both spouses or something like that, an operating agreement in place on who's responsible for what. And then just get to know the laws in your state about your specific setup. Because some states, and I know Washington and Colorado are this way, each year you have to file an annual report. I'm not sure every state does that, but some states do, so don't forget to do that. You might be subject to sales tax. So these are all things that you need to research in your state and with what your product or service is.
And I would think even if you have a very simplified business, just, as you mentioned before, work with a bookkeeper to get your accounts set up. And then it might not be a bad idea to have a meeting with an accountant just to go over business practices or business things, so that when you do meet with them at the end of the year or the beginning of next year to file taxes, then you have everything set up and your business running smoothly and your taxes running smoothly. You don't want to get in trouble with the IRS or the federal government.
No, and it is a good idea to pre-meet with a tax professional. And my biggest advice when hiring a tax professional is to make sure that the person you're hiring, 1, has experience doing taxes in your industry, but 2, make sure that they have, it's called a PTIN. It's a Prepared Tax Identification Number. Because if they don't have either of those things, they are not a legitimate tax preparer. And so then you run the risk of being audited just because you hired somebody accidentally that has duped you.
And I know, because we're friends as well as colleagues, that every year you get people coming to you who have found out their previous tax preparer wasn't qualified to do it. It's at the end of the year and they've made a mess of their taxes, and guess who gets to fix it? You
Yeah,
do.
I do.
So
Yeah, I do a lot of cleanup work, and that's fine. I love cleanup work, but it's easier the next year going into it because now we're set up and my clients know what's expected and what they should be looking at. And so, definitely find a qualified professional to help you. And on the other note of that, not to talk bad about any of the franchise tax places, but they are set up for personal taxes only. So if you take business stuff into them, it's hit or miss whether or not you get a preparer that understands business taxes. So
good advice, very good advice. So tell us a little bit about your business and who you're able to serve, and if you have any openings for new clients.
Okay, so my business is Genuine Accounting and Tax, and I specialize in small business and individual tax returns. And with my clients, I work with them to ensure that their bookkeeping is where it needs to be, their records are where it needs to be. I'm available for, hey, I need this piece of equipment. Is this a good investment? So, advice, tax advice, business advice. I've been doing this for a long time. I've ran several businesses throughout my career. And, this is what I do. So I'm passionate about making sure that people understand their business, where it's going, and how it affects their taxes. And I am currently accepting new clients. However, we're getting close to the window where I will not be because we're coming into tax season. So, but yes, I am full service accounting, everything from bookkeeping and payroll taxes, all the way through federal taxes, and even working with the IRS if you are audited.
And because you are remote, and because of Zoom and things like that, you can actually prepare taxes, be of service to anyone
Within the U.S.
within the United States.
So all 50 states, I am licensed by the IRS, so I do have the ability to work in all 50 states.
Great. And I will make sure that Kelly's information is down below, so that if you're interested and would like to get a hold of her, just asking questions about her availability, you'll be able to do that. If you are serious about wanting to start a business or working from home in 2022, then you can enter our sweepstakes for a 12-week coaching opportunity where I'm going to help you do that. I'm going to help you get that business going. I'm going to help you get off to a start where you can actually get in there and start making some extra money to make your 2022 more financially successful. So here are the things that you need to know. First of all, you can't apply, you can't register for this opportunity until all 4 videos are out. So here are the things that you do need to know. You do have to watch all 4 videos, so you'll be able to put in your entry on January 7th, not before, because we have to have all these videos out. You have to watch all the videos from the beginning to the end. You have to like the video. You have to be a subscriber. You do have to be serious about wanting to get into business. So in order to be able to do this, I'm going to have a link beginning on that last video where you can supply your name and phone number, and we're going to do a random award, a random selection to award this special bonus gift, which is a $1,200 value. 12 weeks of personal coaching to get your new business or work from home situation up and running on the fast track.